Anything else? Councillor Christie.
Just before that, I guess I could give a verbal on the Three Hills community.
Discovery night.
Yep.
Okay, 10.2, Three Hills Discovery Night. Councillor Christie.
If there's nothing else, I'll move the agenda as amended.
All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, you're in favor? Councillor Hugo? Sorry, that must be a delay. I take
Yes,
it
I
you're
am.
in favor. Okay. All right, so that was unanimous. We've pre-circulated the minutes of the August 17th meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Deputy Reeve McGee.
I'd like to move to accept the minutes of the previous meeting.
Okay, we've got a motion before us to accept the previous, or the minutes as presented. All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. All righty, where are we here? So we are going to switch up the agenda here a little bit. Where is our Oh, 8.3. Jared. Thought while you were here, we'd give you the floor and you can start out with the resolution. And anytime you're ready.
Good morning, Reeve and members of council. Thank you for having me this morning. Before you this morning, we have a request for a decision concerning increasing knowledge sharing among regulators of cannabis production facilities. So for background, for those that don't know, I am a municipal intern with the town of Three Hills. Mike approached me to look at inconsistencies and inefficiencies with regards to cannabis growers within the county and issues that pertain to those individuals, and put together a resolution for the purposes of bringing forward to RMA. The recommended motion is that council move to forward the attached resolution to the Central District RMA, supporting the following two operative clauses, specifically to advocate to Health Canada that municipalities be given open and continuous access to information on sites of cannabis production, as well as municipalities be given open and continuous information to verify compliance or prevent non-compliance among registered cannabis users. I'll just go through the background of the RFD and then we can go from there. This request for decision follows from a previous motion, 166-21/21, passed by council, requesting administration to initiate a conversation with RMA and FCM to lobby for more access to information relevant to cannabis production within municipalities. Following the previous motion, administration began exploring current gaps in legislation concerning two primary issues: the limited access to information municipalities have to enforce local land use regulations, and the lack of effective compliance monitoring and reporting to municipalities of previously approved sites to grow cannabis. The recommended motion addresses these two concerns with supplemental information provided within the attached resolution. So that would be the second attachment to the RFD. Or the attachment to the RFD, sorry. Through the research conducted, administration communicated with proponents of other related resolutions concerning cannabis production within municipalities, Health Canada, and other bodies relevant to drafting the resolution. From this research, administration was able to determine that within the current legislative framework, there is no way for municipalities to determine from Health Canada where sites of cannabis production may have been approved within a municipality's borders. This limits the municipality's ability to apply local land use regulations proactively. Central to the issues discussed within the attached resolution are the tensions observed between Health Canada and local municipalities. As the federal administrator for providing individuals with a variety of licenses to grow cannabis in residential contexts, including for medicinal purposes, Health Canada has communicated that those individuals who use cannabis have a right to safety and security regarding their ability to medicate with cannabis. However, the current access to information regarding sites of cannabis production is currently limited to anecdotal evidence or voluntary disclosure from site owners or operators. The result is that individuals who may be either operating entirely illegal operations or individuals who have been granted a license to grow cannabis are effectively beyond the municipality's knowledge, which presents a potential risk to both residents and property. This resolution has attempted to put forward a compromise that balances an individual's right to privacy and security with the municipality's ability to govern land use activities effectively. Benefits from supporting this resolution include putting forward this resolution in front of other rural municipalities, which may also endorse this resolution. With enough support, this resolution could be advocated for on behalf of all RMA members to bring more effective governing processes in regulating sites of cannabis production. Administration welcomes any feedback that members of council may be willing to provide. So that kind of gives you an overview of the document I prepared for council. In this document, the resolution, pardon me, the resolution is organized as a preamble which discusses matter of facts pertaining to cannabis regulations and current gaps within those regulations, the two operative clauses that identify what is being proposed, and then background information. Within that background information is experiences discussed with Barb and members of the planning team here at the Kneehill County. Other additional resolutions have been put forward through RMA and FCM, and any additional challenges or additional information that are pertinent to the matter in question. Does anyone have any questions?
Anyone got questions for Jared? Or I know resolutions can be quite stimulating, but
I tried to liven up for everyone.
But I think it's important that we put something out there because we are running into issues with not being able to get any information from the federal government side of things, and that comes into an issue for us as far as safety codes and resident safety and the neighbors around the area. So, Councillor King.
Yeah, my comment would be I believe this addresses pretty much the issues that I raised earlier when we first addressed this. So because of that, I'll make the motion that council forward the attached resolution to the Central District of RMA, supporting the two operative clauses that are listed here, be it resolved. So.
All righty. So we have a motion before us to forward the attached resolution to the Central District RMA so that it can come before our fall agenda in November at the RMA conference, if it's going to still be held, but if not, it'll be virtual. Is there any discussion to that motion? Yes, Councillor Penner.
I just want to thank Jared for putting this together. It's very well put together, and how you've brought some other situations from other municipalities into this RFD and resolution. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion to the motion? Yes, Mr. Hogan.
Through you, Mr. Reeve, just to, for all of council's awareness, Wheatland County did discuss this at their recent council meeting, and they have voted in favor of seconding it. So we'll be forwarding, the deadline for the agenda for this is tomorrow. So later today, we'll forward this to Central Zone RMA, but it will go with, there is a seconder for it already.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, if there's no more discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thanks, Jared, for bringing this forward or presenting this.
Thank you.
And you did a great job, and we'll see how it works out in November.
Thank you.
And by all means, if you want to stay, you sure can.
Thank you.
All righty. I just thought I would let Jared present in case he had other business to attend to. So our next agenda item is 5.1.1, the cancellation of municipal planning. Welcome, Captain Barb.
Yes, it was a fun day. Good morning, Mr. Reeve, members of council. So I've got a cancellation of the September Municipal Planning Commission meeting, but I'm also going to sneak in another motion. We are going to just, because of the election coming, we want to move the October MPC meeting just prior to the election so that there's opportunity for some orientation if we get some changes in some of the seats. So. But Bylaw 1784, Municipal Planning Commission Bylaw states under conduct of business that the commission shall hold such meetings as are necessary to fulfill the commission's responsibilities. So the Municipal Planning Commission currently holds their meetings on the fourth Thursday of every month, and council sets these dates and times during the organizational meeting every October. So the next meeting is scheduled for September 23rd, 2021. Since these meeting dates are set by a motion of council at their organizational meeting, council authority is required to cancel one. Administration has not received any applications for discretionary use development permits or subdivisions prior to the deadline for the September meeting, and no other applications can be considered for the September meeting as there is insufficient time to review and circulate the application. There are no other agenda items for discussion, so we're asking you to move to cancel that September meeting, and then we'll talk about October after.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Hazelton? Yes, Councillor Christie.
I'd make the motion to cancel the Municipal Planning Commission meeting scheduled for September 23rd, 2021, as recommended.
Okay. We have a motion before us to cancel our September municipal MPC meeting. Is there any discussion to that? Seeing not, call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And you want to talk to the October date?
Yes, so, and we've, I guess, decided this a little while ago, and I don't know that a motion has actually come. So with the election being, when it is on October the 18th, it's not very much time for new electors to get their orientations, basically. So what we've determined is easier to do is move the MPC meeting prior to the election. So October 14th is the proposed date. And then, so it would change the October 28th date to October 14th.
Okay. What's council's wishes? Deputy Reeve McGee.
I move that council move the October Municipal Planning Commission meeting scheduled for October 28th, 2021 to October 14th, 2021.
Thank you. We have a motion before, yes.
Just a
Councillor
question, how does this change, like, is that going to impact people who were thinking they might, what's the deadline for the October meeting, I guess is what I'm asking. So,
September 15th. And that's what we have been communicating. We have a couple applications already for October. And so I think tomorrow is the deadline to get into the October meeting. But we do, November and December are also pushed forward, so it does give us that month. But we were worried about leaving it for 6 weeks or 7 weeks if we pushed it back. And then you're on top of the next month's meeting. So we pushed it in front.
okay, so you have been in communication with
Yep.
people saying,
Yes,
Get
so
your act
when we're
together.
getting applicants, yes, we are communicating that prior to the motion.
Okay, is there any other discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, we'll call the question. Oh, we got it up on screen? Yes, we do. Okay. So as it's stated, move the scheduled October 28th date to October the 14th. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thanks, Barb. So we have the agenda item 5.1.2, redesignation. And anytime you're ready.
Sure. So we've had a withdrawal for redesignation for a portion of the northeast of 213326 west of 4. And since it happened last minute, we haven't been able to put that in the paper or anything, but we have notified. But we do need a council motion to cancel the public hearing for bylaw 1844 that was scheduled for today at 10 a.m. So Michael and Rochelle Daniels have submitted a request to withdraw their application to redesignate a portion of the northeast of 213326 west of 4 from the agricultural district to light industrial district. First reading to bylaw 1844 was provided on August 17th, 2021. With the applicant withdrawing their application, bylaw 1844 will not receive second and third reading. This means that this bylaw is now void and will never be in effect. In the future, if the applicant wants to apply again, a new bylaw will need to be created and we'll start the process all over. The public hearing was scheduled for today at 10 a.m. Notifications for the public hearing were sent to adjacent landowners and the ad for this public hearing was placed in the Three Hills Capital. However, it doesn't come out until tomorrow, so we needed to make sure that we covered all the bases. Notification of the cancellation was sent to adjacent landowners and an ad was also placed on our website. Since the withdrawal happened on Thursday, September 9th, there was no time to advertise previously in the paper, so.
All right, are there any questions for Ms. Hazelton? Someone care to make a motion? Councillor Penner.
I'll make the motion that council move to cancel the public hearing for bylaw 1844 scheduled for today, September 14th at 10 a.m. as per the request of the applicant.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to cancel the public hearing. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thanks, Barb.
Thank you.
Going to be a slow September now, is it? All righty. Our next agenda item, 5.5 or 5.4.1, bylaw 1800. Welcome, Deb. And anytime you are ready.
Thank you, Council. Today I bring back to you the proposed traffic control bylaw 1800 for third reading. Background, because we've gone through this a couple times, I'm just going to kind of skip over, but background, the traffic bylaw regulates traffic for public safety purposes on county roads. First reading was on July 20th, and then the second reading was on August 17th. Ratepayer consultation to be completed regarding the reducing of speed limits in our hamlets from 50 kilometers an hour to 40. We're rescinding some bylaws, which are attached there. The discussion, section 1 is the definitions, section 2 is authority. Section 3 is road protection, which includes materials on roads. Section 4 is weight restrictions and road bans. Section 5 is rates of speeds. A list is going to be created to go with this because the authority then goes to the CAO. Section 6 is parking, includes parking signage. Section 7 is stop and yield. Again, that authority goes to the CAO for installation of traffic control devices. And then a list again will be created. Section 8 is sidewalks. Section 9 is agreements and permits, including road use agreements. Section 10 is off-highway vehicles, and there was a question about this at the last council meeting. So without, in consultation not only with the road guys, the Alberta road guys, and our CPOs, we talked about whether or not we could include an exemption for agricultural purposes, and that was a resounding no, because it would be against the Traffic Safety Act. From what my understanding is that without this bylaw, OHV operation may be ticketed for many reasons, but we can actually put some rules in here to follow throughout our county. And so we had sent these to the next level in transportation, and they were very happy with the wording that we did put in there. And then just kind of as an offside, yesterday, our peace officers came across a rancher that was moving a whole bunch of cattle, and they actually stopped the roads and helped them. So they wouldn't ticket them, right? They just stopped the roads and helped them because we're there for safe operation of OHVs, so. Section 11 includes 11 and 12 as penalties, and 13 and 14 is the rescinded bylaws. So the financial implications, we will have to put some signage up, which was already noted in some areas in some of our hamlets, plus whether or not we go with that 40 speed limit. And yeah, I think that's about it. So council options are to pass the third reading of the bylaw, to pass the, or to send it back for further recommendations to administration.
Are there any questions for Ms. Grossfield? I think we've been through this a couple of times already, so what are... Councillor King.
I'll make a couple comments. Certainly signage would be welcomed. In conversation with the residents that live in Huxley anyway, there is no signage from the time you leave the highway to your outside of the hamlet going east, and they certainly would appreciate that. It was pretty much a resounding no problem to the 40-kilometer change. Most people within the hamlet felt that it's hard to get above that anyway. So, but there are notable exceptions to that rule too. So, but anyway, just a comment on signage would certainly be appreciated for sure.
Councillor Kiever.
I guess I'm still having a problem with the weight restrictions on our roads when I think of last spring when unlicensed manure haulers, completely destroyed a road that took a day of our crew to fix, and there is no fine for those offenses. If it had been an oil company, we wouldn't have had the bill. But when agriculture is doing the same thing as an oil company to our roads, maybe they should be fined.
There is a provision of tracking in there. I mean, it's not weights, but it is tracking. And we can set different weights for different roads. We don't have to keep with that list of road bans. I mean, that's kind of the whole point of this, is that the CAO would review that more on a regular basis, that list of road weights and restrictions. So last year was a bit of a different because that was a provincial. The province came down on some of those roads and said no weight restrictions, right? So.
Well, what are council's wishes? Councillor Penner.
I'll just put a bit of discussion first. My residents, like I said before, with the new stop sign at the railway line, has slowed traffic down. There are still some that don't abide by the 50, and majority, when touching base with them, would like to see the 40, even though we have a 30 playground there too. But their trouble with signage is the fish dam, how to find the fish dam. But that's not to do with this. We get a lot of traffic through the middle of town trying to find the fish dam. But in saying that, I'll make the motion that council approve third reading of bylaw 1800 or 1800 traffic control as presented.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us for third reading of bylaw 1800. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks. Thanks, Deb. It's been a long time getting this one through, but
just a comment before we move on. Are your residents looking for something that doesn't exist anymore? When they're referring to the fish dam, are they still stocking at Swalwell or not?
Not necessarily, it's just that the direction to the fish dam, the sign is small, and people aren't finding the fish dam. They go up and down every street looking for it. And meanwhile, it's out of town, you know, half a mile. So it was just that, looking for larger signs, but then some of the residents don't want a larger sign because then it encourages them to go down their street and not some of the other streets, so it's a catch-22. But that's the biggest complaint. Like the weekends, there's been some big events at the dam, and so there's been a lot of traffic through town. So up and down the streets at nighttime, they can't work out how to get out down past the ball diamond, so.
Well, I'm sure they'll find it eventually. Okay, our next agenda item is 6.1. Welcome, Carolyn. And anytime you're ready.
Morning, Council. First of all, I want to apologize for not having the attachment in the package, but I caught it yesterday driving to work, came to mind. So I think Carolyn passed it out this morning to you.
Yes.
And it was just the letter, official letter from Pine Cliff. So Pine Cliff has approached Kneehill County regarding a further tax deferral payment agreement schedule for their 2021 taxes. They would like to enter into a 6-month agreement for equal monthly installments and not be charged any late penalties. They have done similar for the last 2 years. Council has authorized a tax penalty bylaw that provides for penalties on the 1st of November for current taxes and on the 1st of each month thereafter for all tax arrears at a rate of 2%. In order to assist companies during this difficult economic time, Council has been proactive in utilizing the tools as allowed by the MGA during the last 2 years. The intent has been to minimize the delinquencies in payment of the annual taxes by providing time to pay without penalty. We've been very successful with collections, and we have a good customer looking for a shorter prepayment period to get through this year and then be back on schedule for their 2022 taxes. Pine Cliff has been approved for tax deferral payment agreements for the 2019 and 2020 taxes previously. They've been an excellent customer with payments coming in on time each month. The 2020 taxes will be paid in full on September 30th. Pine Cliff expects its cash flow to increase over the coming months and have asked for a 6-month extension to pay the 2021 taxes with full payment made by March 31st, 2022. At this time, they anticipate full payment of their 2022 by the date of October 31st, 2022, so they'll be back on track. In addition, Pine Cliff has acquired delinquent assets as well and will be paying a prorated 2020 levy from the acquisition date and the full 2021 levies for those acquired assets. They are a company that is still growing and will be a benefit to the area for the years to come. Our other clients currently on tax deferral agreements are also doing well with their monthly payments, and we have been advised by some that their intention is to pay their 2021 levies in full by the due date. The payments made in 2021 would cover Pine Cliff's portion of all county requisitions that are required to be made to third parties, the province and the senior housing. So that's their October, November, December payments will cover those requisitions that we have to pay out for this year. So there's no loss on our part in that regard. And this would not create a negative budget variance since the budget for tax penalties was established at a very conservative level. So the request for the motion is that council agree to enter a tax deferral payment agreement with Pine Cliff for payment of their 2021 taxes over a 6-month payment plan starting October 31st and ending March 31st with no penalties to be assessed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Severson? So the way I read it, end of this month, they will be paid up for last year's taxes,
Yes.
and their intent is to pay the end of October for this year's taxes.
Right, to begin, yeah, their 6-month term for the
Okay.
2021 levies, yeah. And I believe the schedule that they've proposed is attached to their letter. So they'll be paying just under $580,000 a month for 6 months.
Okay. Deputy Reeve McGee.
First off, I'd like to thank you for this RFD. As soon as I saw that on the agenda, I had all kinds of questions, and every one of them was covered in the RFD, so well done for me.
Oh, thank you.
Having said that, I'd like to suggest that the council agree to enter a tax deferral payment with Pine Cliff Energy Limited for the payments of 2021 taxes over a 6-month payment plan from October 31st, 2021 to March 31st, 2022, and no penalties to be assessed.
All right, thank you. We have a motion before us to enter into the tax deferral payment agreement with Pine Cliff. Is there any discussion prior to the question? Everybody's good? Everybody understands what's happening? You got a comment?
Well, I guess a bird in hand is worth I don't know how many out in the bush, but, and I guess the good part of it is they didn't ask for a deferral for a whole year. They only went for 6 months, so I guess it's probably setting a precedent, but it's worth money.
Well, it's better than not getting paid, that's for sure. Is there any other discussion to the motion? Seeing not, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Thank you,
Thanks, Ms.
Council.
Severson, and good job. Well, that's good to hear. Okay, our next agenda item is 8.1, Policy 6-1. Welcome, Ms. Buchanan.
Good morning, Reeve Council. All right, so today I am bringing back the Community Business Investment Partnership Grant Program that was presented to you in August by Community Futures Wildrose. So with that, Council made a motion to enter into a partnership with Community Futures Wildrose to implement this business incentive program. However, that we bring back the policy for your review and discussion and decision ultimately. So just to do a quick refresh, the business, we'll call it CBIP. So the Community Business Investment Partnership Grant Program was actually originally a Main Street program that Community Future offered the urban communities in their areas. It was incredibly successful with the town of Three Hills back in the day. Essentially what we had done is we had gone back to Community Futures and said, how can we make this rural to help support our rural businesses in the region? So it took a while, but they reviewed and revamped the program, going through their board, of course, to amend their lending approvals and their agreements in order to make this program happen. So essentially what we are asking is that with this partnership, Community Futures Wildrose would prevent loans to our business community in rural Kneehill. Those loans can be up to $10,000 each. We have capped the amount that we are willing to let Community Futures lend out at $30,000. Our portion of this partnership is then once those loans are paid in full, Kneehill County will then in turn pay the interest on those loans. So we've then capped the amount that we're willing to pay in that grant funding at $2,700. The math doesn't fully line up just because budgets were done before the program was formally finalized and the interest rates, et cetera. So with that, we've put together a policy. So when we proceed with this program, we'll enter into a formal agreement with Community Futures Wildrose that outlines each party's responsibility in this program. So a few highlights from the policy. At this time, loan interest will be a maximum of 5%. At such time, if that amount changes, we'll have to come back to policy to amend, or come back to council to amend the policy. We've asked Community Futures Wildrose not to lend out more than $10,000 per applicant to a maximum of $30,000 per year. So that does not necessarily mean 3 $10,000 loans. It could be 6 $5,000 loans. It's really dependent on what the loan request is to them. We as Kneehill County don't really have any input or feedback into the lending process. That's Community Futures Wildrose. Then in exchange, we'll pay up to $2,700 a year in interest. So keeping in mind that even though we have that budgeted for this year, again, the program took a little bit longer to implement than we hoped, chances are we will not start paying that money out for 3 years, assuming everybody goes full term on their loan. So we do have it in our future forecasting for that amount. And that way too, somebody may take out the loan and pay it back in a year. You only pay what that interest is for that year. We've added a few additional stipulations to our policy that Community Futures Wild Rose hasn't included in theirs. Again, the purpose for putting together a policy. So we have asked that in terms of eligibility, Community Futures Wild Rose will get the applications and they'll present them to us to confirm eligibility. We've asked that because number one, we want to make sure that they have all their appropriate Kneehill County permits and licensing in place. We want to make sure that they've been in operation for at least a year. Some other key highlights. Funding will not go to projects that are already started or completed. The funding cannot go to any business renovations or improvements that don't contribute specifically to the appearance or the functionality of that business. And if for some reason the business closes prior to the end of the term, Kneehill County will not be paying out the portion of the grant funds on that interest. We've added these essentially because this is a business incentive program. This entire project is really to assist the businesses we already have in our region. So there's other programs that we could implement in the future for new business, but this is specifically to assist the ones that are already here. And then just to clarify again, Community Futures only lends money to businesses. They have stipulations in which you are required to even get funding through them. The money for this specific project can go to so if you, say, have a separate building on your property that you're doing beef sales out of, if you have a home office where you're doing, say, insurance or some kind of ag, if you need a specialized piece of equipment, say you have a printing company, if you need potentially new computer equipment to operate your business. Another thing we've ensured they added is the ability to use the funding to develop websites so that you can improve e-commerce. Quite often in the past, what I found is the people that are taking out these loans don't necessarily need the loan to pay for the project that they're implementing. However, knowing that they can spread those payments out basically at no additional cost over 3 years is a little bit of a push in the right direction to get them to especially in these difficult and uncertain times, to get them to still move that business forward. Does council have any questions, comments?
Councillor Kiever.
Would this apply for a community hall that wanted to tin the roof or paint it or something like that? Or they're not a business, but they still are out there in the community?
They are, however, I don't believe they would be eligible for Community Futures funding, and this is specifically a Community Futures project. So no, I do not believe a nonprofit would be eligible unless there's some way they can get the loan through Community Futures Wild Rose.
Yeah, the criteria for getting this loan would come through Community Futures, not through the council.
Yeah. We'll make the decision on the grant, they make the decision on the loan.
Does anyone else have any questions? Well, if not, what's council's wish? Councillor King.
So I'll make the motion that council approves policy 6-1, Community Business Investment Partnership Grant Policy as presented.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to approve policy 6-1. Is there any discussion to that motion? Councillor Christie.
I like the point that it's got e-commerce and some internet front end too. It's not just the front of your building, but your awareness on the internet, which is very important now. So thank you for that.
Okay, is there any other discussion to the motion? I see none. I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Buchanan.
Thank you, Reeve and Council.
And our way to help business in Kneehill County. All right, our next agenda item is 8.2. And that would be Bylaw 1846, Procedural Bylaw. And Mr. Hogan, you're presenting?
I am.
Okay.
Through to council, through you, Mr. Reeve, this is again a returning item that council has seen before. This is regarding the procedural bylaw. So as council's aware, the procedural bylaw is a bylaw that governs the meeting procedures for not just council, but for a number of other meetings, whether that's committee of the whole or various committees that report to council. So whether that's ASB, public hearings and planning, all that sort of stuff falls within the gamut of this bylaw. I won't spend a lot of time on the background and changes. Council has seen those before, but of course, if there's any questions, administration would be more than happy to answer those. I will jump to the section. There have been some questions or changes since the previous time that this was brought to council. And so to outline those, we've removed the statement that minutes from the committee of the whole meeting will be included in the next regular council meeting agenda. So we put all the minutes now on the website after approval. And if council has actually looked at if you've gone back recently and looked at the county's website, you'll notice that the committee of the whole agendas and minutes are now there. So that's available to our public. Meetings through electronic communications may now be available to all meetings, not just council meetings. In case of an emergency, meetings can be conducted electronically with all members participating electronically. So there are some, that isn't a normal course of action, but it is in there in case we find ourselves in another lockdown or unable to meet. There are provisions in there that say, hey, we can still facilitate business in this way, even though it's not our normal way of doing it. Through resolution, council can deny the use of electronic meeting if a location is disruptive, unsecure, or located in a place deemed inappropriate. So if you have a member that is attempting to attend electronically from, say, the middle of a grocery store or something like that, you can say, no, that's not appropriate, and it's within the bylaw gives council the authority to say you're not going to be able to attend in that way. Included the phrase where all meetings may be live streamed if council chooses. And so what we're doing here is a little bit of future proofing is if any point in the future it's decided that we want to live stream any of the other meetings, whether that's say Municipal Planning Commission or Ag Services Board or take your pick, we don't need to go back with the bylaw or we won't get roadblocked by the bylaw. It's simply a choice that council can make, and you've got the authority to do it under the bylaw. And so with that, we're proposing that council give second and third reading to the procedural bylaw, or to the proposed procedural bylaw.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Hogan?
Just a comment.
Yes, Councillor Penner.
Just a comment. I still have a bit of an issue with when it comes to closed sessions and being able to broadcast it. And the only reason I bring this up is from a previous meeting, not our meeting, but a meeting I attended. We thought certain people were off, and because they didn't have their camera on, we didn't know. And I think any time we are in camera, in closed session, I should say, the individual's camera should be on so we can tell who's in the meeting. And it happened to us once, and it was just a real shock to us, and just lucky that the person that was still on was a trustworthy person. They didn't do it deliberately. It's just the way it worked out with all this electronic stuff that they were still there. And we thought they were gone because we couldn't see them. But so with this new day and age, with how we can have meetings and electronically and whatnot else, I just need the camera on, in my opinion, for closed sessions. Okay, so I've got a question for you then, Mr. Hogan.
Is there a way to keep the cameras on but mute the audio at our end?
I believe that there is. We'd have to refer that technical question to IT, but I believe the answer to that is yes.
Okay, so are we amending?
I don't think we need to amend it. I just wanted to bring it to the attention. From this end, it's fine. It's from the other end this way. You can see I've had to attend some meetings off-site, and you can still see and hear with our system, without the general public knowing, but it's just that, and I know we have bad internet away from the building, so it does slow it down and things like that when you have your camera on. But I'm not up for an amendment here. I do like what I've seen and the changes that you have made, but if it's noticed again in my meetings, I may bring it forward down the road.
Okay, so what you're after is when the closed session comes on, the audio is muted, but you still want camera, the video portion streaming?
That still happens. It's just if I'm in my house, my camera needs to be on, then you know, whoever's in the chamber here, that I'm the only one in my room. There's nobody else in my room with me, or
Yeah,
wherever
there's
I'm
nobody
at.
behind you, but there could be in front of you.
You can, usually tell, but
Yeah, okay.
it's just such a, with this new technology and the way that the world is going, I'm still a little uneasy with it, but I like the changes that we've made here. But just a discussion point. It may come up in the future if I notice that, or I feel I'm not comfortable with the way some of the people that are out of the chamber are participating in the meeting. And I realize the Reeve has the capability of disconnecting if it's disruptive and things like that, so that's very positive, so.
Okay. So I guess we'll address it as it happens. Okay. Councillor Kiever.
This day and age where people seem to have some funny beliefs, I don't know why people are still thinking that when we're in camera, we're doing weird and evil things. It just boggles my mind where they get these ideas.
There's conspiracy theories all over the world.
Well, I had a guy that couldn't understand why we didn't put this out for public knowledge. So I said to him, I said, okay, the next time you go to talk to your bank manager, can I come with you? Well, no. Well, same thing here, folks.
All righty, so we have a motion before us. Well, we don't have a motion yet, but what are council's wishes? Councillor Christie.
I'll move second reading to bylaw 1846, that being a bylaw for the proposed purpose of regulating meeting procedures for council and council committee meetings.
All right, now we have a motion before us. We have second reading of bylaw 1846. Is there any discussion to that bylaw? Or to that motion, I mean. Seeing as not, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Councillor King.
So I'll make the motion that council provide third and final reading to bylaw 1846.
All righty, we have a motion before us for third reading, bylaw 1846. Any discussion to that motion? I see none. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. All right, we've got a new procedural bylaw. Thanks, Mike, for putting all this stuff together. We'll see how it works. These new times are challenging.
Through you, Mr. Reeve, I'll defer that thanks to Carolyn. She did much of the work I say much. She did pretty much all the work putting this bylaw together.
Now the truth comes out. I was pretty sure she had quite a bit to do with it. Thanks, Carolyn. All right, does anybody want a break? Yeah? All right, we will recess the meeting. Come back in about 10:15, okay?
received from various entities, in this case, the RCMP. And this is inquiring if council would like to meet with K Division and the Solgen and the RCMP at the upcoming RMA convention, assuming that it still goes forward. They're asking for a response by September 20th, and we're inquiring whether council would like to try to arrange a meeting with them or not. Administratively, we think the detachments are aware of our concerns. We're not sure there's anything that we need to, at least administratively, meet with K Division about, but we wanted to pose a question to council.
Any questions for Mr. Hogan? Councillor Christie.
Would it give any credibility to meeting with them to thank them and support them so that the province listens? Like, whether it shows any support for the RCMP or to, that would be the only benefit I would see was, but whether that would have any weight past that meeting, I don't know.
Mr. Hogan?
Through you, Mr. Reeve. I don't know that that would get, I don't know that that would get weight placed on it past that meeting. The other portion is that when we do respond to, if we respond in the affirmative, there's no guarantee that we'll get the meeting. They'll look at what we're planning on showing up to discuss with them. And if they are oversubscribed, then they'll start prioritizing as well.
These meetings are basically set up if you've got complaints or concerns.
Well, and right now we've got a really good relationship with our local RCMP, so I don't want to rock that boat either.
Deputy Reeve McGee.
I'd like to move that we accept the invitation to meet at the RMA convention from the RCMP for information as presented.
Okay. Is there any discussion to that motion? I guess we should probably determine what it is we're going to speak about, because they're going to need an agenda. So what are we going to be there to discuss? Mr. Hogan?
I'm sorry, just looking to clarify, is Deputy McGee, the motion was the one as written?
Yes, simply to accept it as information.
Yeah, so we'd be accepting the invitation for information. We wouldn't be
Oh,
we
yes.
wouldn't be putting forward the meeting.
Yeah, sorry,
okay.
I wasn't clear.
I missed the last part. I think I'm starting out this session the same way I started out the first of the meeting. Okay, so, all right, so we have a motion before us, council, to accept the invitation to the RMA convention from RCMP for information as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. All right, 8.5, Bylaw 1847. Mr. Hogan.
Through Mr. Reeve, the item that's before you is a request that we've received from a resident regarding putting in two Texas gates along a dirt trail, and they're looking to utilize the space for grazing cattle in the upcoming bit of time. As we look at this, there are a couple of things at play. Is going back to the policy, which is an old one, is this does require a bylaw if council would want to go through that. We have flagged that as something that should be reviewed under the policy review. But for right now, that is as it is. We are looking at a couple of things in the policy. It does state that if a road is a through road, that we would say no to this request. There is some discrepancy there as whether a dirt trail would count as a road under the policy, or where you define that as. If you're defining a dirt trail as a through road, then the elements of the policy would not be met. And transportation has based comments on that regard. If you're saying that a dirt trail is not considered a through road for the day-to-day traveling public, then there is an argument there that this could be done under the policy. However, it depends where you put that in. Transportation has raised concerns around maintenance issues. So there would be some questions there. Will indicate that in conversation with the applicant, as they have indicated that they're looking at this as a temporary thing. So with some of the information presented to you, we would need to look at possibly revising that and looking at this not necessarily as a permanent installation, but as a temporary one. But that, again, having been out of the office, I need to confirm if that is still the applicant's desire or not.
Yeah, I think with this year's drought, there's a lot of people trying to figure out a way how to manage their cattle without having to sell them. But calling this temporary, who knows what next year is going to be. I mean, we don't know if it's going to be better or if it's going to be worse, but we know it's going to be different. So you stated that you don't know if this is actually going to be a temporary or a permanent, or we actually have the ability, I see in the policy, that if it needs to be moved, county has the ability to move it.
Do they own the land on both sides of this road allowance for the whole length?
That's my question here. Coming from a country, we do this all the time back home. Here, I have land in special areas where this happens. We have Texas gates at both ends. It does on minimal traffic roads, not necessarily just black soil, some gravel. This does happen, but my one question here is the applicant is not the owner of the land. So should this application be coming from the owner of the land? Just looking, because we may get more in the future here, should the owner of the land be coming with this application so that we know that they know what's going on with their land, even though it's rented? I don't know the ins and outs of rental agreements, but I just had a question on the applicant compared to the owner of the land.
So you're thinking that maybe the owner of the land should sign off on the ability to put in the Texas gate for the renter, or for the renter to put in it?
That would be my feeling, correct, but.
Any thoughts on that, Mr. Hogan?
So through you, Mr. Reeve, it is something that we can get sign off for if we need to from the, I'm saying that from a theoretical standpoint, is there's nothing stopping us from asking the owner to just verify that they're okay with this. In this case, the individual is a leasee, which is allowed under policy for them to make application. And I believe that they're leasing both sides, is my understanding.
Yeah, for sure, it's on both sides. It's just north of me.
Yeah.
They have it. I see no issues with this. It's a very minimal used black soil road. The part that they're wanting to the north of it, sure, it's gravelled to the well sites. Yeah, and not necessarily just because of the drought. And this doesn't happen very often that the owner is on both sides, or probably is if we look really close, but going forward, I think the bylaw, and there's a lot of statements here with cleaning out of the Texas gate and things like, because that does happen, the grader makes an error and he pushes too much in or whatever, but it says in here that they would, the applicant would be required to clean it out and things like that. So I don't see a negative here. I see very positive. What's everyone else's thoughts?
Oh, Councillor Christie.
I guess one of my thoughts is it's a dirt trail that's probably 100 feet wide that it would be being grazed would get rid of any fire hazard too, like in the fall. That's a lot of stuff that's sitting there that, especially on a trail that's not used very much, you get somebody up there playing and start a fire, then you got a problem.
This dirt trail is farmed right to the edge. There's no ditch for the most part on this one, but I mean, it's got to be across the board, and I hear what you're saying.
Through you, Mr. Reed, my understanding from discussion with the applicant is that they're looking at this as if they're able to put in those 2 Texas gates, it will save them time and resources from doing a lot of fencing to accomplish the same thing.
Mr. Eve?
Yes, Councillor King.
So, because Councillor Penner is somewhat familiar with this situation there, are there neighbors that move equipment on that road?
Yes, there would be. They're not right adjacent neighbors, but there are some that take their machinery, or one in particular takes their machinery from over in the West Country to there.
So then my question would be is if we're setting a 20-foot dimension on the width, is this going to be an impediment to movement of equipment? So are we going to require that there be substantial gates built so that people can move equipment in around these Texas gates? And, you know, if someone comes along with, they need a 35-foot width, then what are they going to do? Does this become a closed road to them?
Absolutely not. Gates would be part of it. I would presume administration would be doing that to allow for the large equipment, depending on the layout of the land, where that gate would be proposed, but no, for sure, there would have to be allowances for machinery, because it's much bigger than the width of the Texas gate. Well, I think when I'm talking about, that's how we have it in special areas, the size of the Texas gate, they just open right up with other gates. But this, we're asking, I believe I read, it's set so many feet in from.
20 meters in.
Yeah, from the road, so there would be a diversion in. But there are ways of opening them up, whether it's a wire gate that opens way up, or, like I said, we have ours just pulled back in season.
So if we're requiring extra width through a wire gate or whatever, does that change this policy up?
Sorry. Through you, Mr. Reeve, it'd be an addition that we would need to look at as to, it wouldn't necessarily change the policy up, but it would be an additional ask, likely in terms of the agreement.
Different, yeah, an extra condition,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's the road, I take it? Doesn't look to have much gravel on it.
To the north it does. On the north end of it, it does, but on the south end, there's none. It
Yeah.
comes off the correction line and up.
It's a good reason you didn't have your mic on. All right, well, what is council's wishes?
I guess I'd like a little more clarification with regard to item 5. Reads, Part C, item 5 reads, Texas gate must be placed on precast cement footings and must be constructed of steel beams. Wooden ties such as railroad ties are not permitted. So I'm proposing that that might need some rewording, where it might say Texas gate must be placed on precast cement footings, period. Wooden ties such as railroad ties are not permitted. And then a clarification, whereas the Texas gate must be constructed of steel beams, no wood construction is allowed. So just to clarify the wording there.
So are we amending the bylaw that, or is that just
I guess I'm suggesting.
cleaning it up.
I'm suggesting that there needs to be some wording clarification there. It's-
Clarification,
To
yeah.
me, it is a little bit not quite clear, I guess.
Sorry, councillor King, so you're talking about 5E? What's not-
I'm looking at Clause 1, Part C, Item 5,
Page 128 on our agenda.
Roman numeral
Oh, sorry, I'm
5.
the other one. I'm actually on the thing.
So yeah, page 128. And my suggestion would be is 5 would read, Texas gate must be constructed of steel beams. No wood construction is allowed, and then there'd be point 6. The Texas gate must be placed on precast cement footings. Wooden ties such as railroad ties are not permitted.
So that would be not a change in the bylaw? Mr. Hogan?
Through you, Mr. Reeve, I was just going to ask some clarifying questions to Councillor King. So you're looking at, Councillor King, your suggestion is under C to have a 5 and a 6, and to break 5 up into one addressing the pre-concrete and one addressing the steel beams? If I'm understanding correctly?
I guess what I'm saying is we need to specify what the Texas gate itself must be constructed of, and we're addressing two things there. One is how it's placed, so what the footings need to be, and we're saying those have to be precast cement. And then we go, and must be constructed of steel beams. So is that the precast cement is constructed of steel beams, or is that the Texas gate? And that's where my clarification is. So I'm saying we should really say the Texas gate must be constructed of steel beams, and that this, then, what's that? Yeah, but the wording is a little, to me, the wording is not quite clear. The Texas gate must be placed on precast cement footings and must be constructed of steel beams. What are we referring to? The Texas gate? Or are we referring to the precast cement footings? Like it just, to me, it just clarifies it. This Texas gate must be constructed of steel beams, period. Texas gate must be placed on precast cement footings, period.
Well, I think technology has changed a bit since this bylaw was instituted, because I know I've got Texas gates. They're not on, I mean, they are on private land, which is different, but there is no requirement for precast cement anymore, because they put those big, huge pipes, so that drops down that 1.5 feet, 2 feet, and there seems to be enough structural strength to that. And then you don't have to worry about, no, it'll hold the weight that goes across it. So, is it necessary to place them on precast cement if you've got the pipe or something substantial to hold the weight? I mean, I'm just asking the question.
So I guess the question is are we clear enough of what we're after here, or should we maybe request this to go back and come back to us?
Oh, Councillor Keever.
There is nothing in here, though, about how much weight the actual gate should be able to carry. And I know around our place, some of those Texas gates are not near as heavy as some of the other ones. You know, I mean, if they go and put a a light Texas gate in here and the road patrol goes across it and bends it all to pieces and cuts up all the tires, it's not much good, is it?
But we also, in here, we have the ability to have them remove it immediately too. If, you know, if,
I'm thinking I would rather, just to clarify, the Texas gate must be placed on precast cement footings or something suitable to hold the weight. And I don't know what weight we're looking at. I guess legal weight limits? I don't know. I wouldn't really like to see it come back at a future meeting because we're kind of time sensitive here. I mean, the reason that this ask is being put in there is to have the ability to graze cattle. We're running out of time. So who would inspect this cattle guard? Like whose specs? It would be the county has to inspect it prior to it being placed?
I don't know that we
Or do
would.
they inspect after the placement?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Reeve, to answer that, I don't believe that we'd inspect it prior to. Is we would look to make sure that it was compliant. The things that council is is debating here is recognizing that we have a policy that's likely out of date.
Yes.
And trying to make amendments to that on the fly, knowing that that policy's got to be reviewed. You know, the clarifications that council's asking for in the bylaw, those can be made, I think, relatively easily. Is if we had, you know, the Texas gate must be placed on appropriate footings and must be and break that up into, you know, that would be number 5. Number 6 would be the gate must be constructed, or the Texas gate must be constructed of steel beams. We can make those clarifications easily enough. And I think if we use the term appropriate, because part of this as well is that there is, you know, our understanding, unless that's changed, is that we would be looking at a temporary structure as well. So it lends itself, if it's going to be temporary, I mean, you can pick up precast concrete. You're putting them down, obviously. You can pick them up as well. Might be easier if it was not concrete.
Well, the ones, the Texas gates I've seen, they're actually quite substantial, and they're actually built. They're built quite well. But whether it's temporary or whether it's permanent, it still has to hold the sufficient weight, or appropriate weight, or built appropriately. So I don't think there's the only thing temporary about it is it might be coming out. But that's the only thing.
Yeah.
That's temporary. The standard should be the same whether it's a temporary or whether it's a permanent, in my thoughts. Councillor Penner.
so in here, should there be some mention about the width to allow equipment to get through there in this bylaw?
Any thoughts, Mr. Hogan? Oh, sorry, Councillor King.
I guess my problem is we're trying to write this on the fly.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if there's a way that we could give permission for temporary placement on grade of 2 Texas gates. So they'd be placed on the surface of the road and then graded up to the Texas gates for this particular grazing period. And then we need to address both this policy and this bylaw, I think, to make it more, address what we need to have happen. So is there a way that we could create a road use agreement or something with the individual so that they would be able to place on grade temporary Texas gates, and then we could address the issue more long-term? So there's some urgency to the request. I'm not comfortable with where we're going here. We're just trying to address everything that we need to address on a long-term basis very quickly here. So I guess my problem is we're trying to create something that we might have to live with for a long time that we might not be very happy with. And so and I guess I'm asking the question of administration, is there a way that we can create a road use agreement? I know when they put the pipelines in, oftentimes they either put a temporary culvert in some of our dirt trails, or they put one in permanently so they can run their water lines under our, and they put the culvert on the surface and then they build the grade up to go over it, or in some places on field accesses, they put those steel plates in that are like a Texas gate, and they're above grade. Surely we could do this for this particular grazing season with this particular ratepayer and then address the concern more long-term. I guess that's my question.
So through you, Mr. Reeve, to answer that, I think the very short answer is yes, we can, for lack of a better term, whether it's a road use agreement or some other sort of workaround, we can do that. That's yes. I will put out there as a caveat, I will never encourage council not to follow council's policy. But in this case where we recognize we have one that is likely very out of date, and you know that you're going to be bringing it up as a change anyway, that is within your domain as council to say, you know what, we recognize that we've got something here that's out of date and maybe not working in the current time period. So if council wants to go that route, or to go the route of directing administration to work with the ratepayer to facilitate this, we can do that.
And then we can look at that bylaw through one of our committee of the whole meetings and refine it from there.
Yeah, I think the direction on this one is, to have a policy that says that we can only do this type of thing by virtue of bylaw. It's not even the bylaw that I would look at. It's back to the main policy saying, here's instances where we would allow this and here's instances where we won't.
Okay.
And then it becomes an application. We need to confirm through legislation that there's nothing in the MGA that says we have to do that by bylaw. I don't believe that there is. We do other things on the roads without a specific bylaw. Or or through the policy, there's a delegation of authority which is allowed under the MGA. So there are, we sort out a few details like that to make sure that we're still on side with everything. But we'd be going back to the policy, which really has two parts, I think, is one to say, in what instances would we allow this and in what instances wouldn't we? And then the second part goes back to the fundamental thing, which I think is what do we define our dirt trails as? I don't think that transportation's comment is wrong. I think that they're correct when they identify this doesn't apply to through roads, and that dirt trail creates a through road. So I don't think transportation's wrong in that comment. In fact, I think they're correct. But I'd also have the question of, do our dirt trails, are we considering those through roads or day-to-day roadways? And that's a broader question that I think when we look at our entire road network and applying, what's a collector versus an arterial, what is the purpose of that dirt trail? And is it to create a through road from one municipal road to another? Well, I would argue that it's not. I would argue that our dirt trails exist to provide farmland access, not to provide day-to-day transportation network connections. And I think that's justified in terms of we don't maintain them like we do our normal road network.
Councillor King.
I guess that was my original question why I asked about farm traffic and equipment movement, is in no way should this restrict the use of that road for agricultural purposes. And so if there are individuals who are using that road for that reason, we definitely don't want to limit their access by putting in Texas gates, temporary or permanent. So there has to be a way for them, a workaround, just like when we have two narrow bridge, we have a level crossing. Same kind of thing here. I guess I'm sitting here going, we're trying to put together something that's going to have long-term impact, and we really don't know what we want to do. And so I'd way rather approve through some workaround a temporary placement. Maybe down the road they will become permanent, but at least for now, a temporary placement to allow this ratepayer to have access for grazing, understanding the conditions of this year, and then look at a more long-term solution if that's necessary in this situation. That's my comment.
And through Mr. Reeve, I think that it is correct. There's going to be a number of tie-ins to answering these questions. You know, one of them that I'd put out there, and again, this isn't for today, but it feeds part of the discussion for later. If we're creating a dirt trail that is connecting two other municipal roadways, is that the application for a dirt trail, or should we be eating the higher cost and that just becomes a gravel roadway, a local road? If it's providing a connection for, you know, if farm equipment is traveling down that road, but it's not specific to those properties, should it be a municipal road now or sometime in the future, right? Of course, there's a cost for that because you're incurring additional maintenance and all that sort of thing. But it's a philosophical question for a council to answer, is if, you know, if our dirt trails should be limited to dead end, basically providing farmland access, but if they're connecting other roads, then maybe they need to be full municipal roads. And that's a philosophical question for when we get into the review of the overall road plan, which will be a next council item discussion, but it ties in.
Councillor Christie?
I guess, listening to the conversation, the bylaw needs to have some kind of a permitting program in it so that each request can be evaluated accordingly. Because if you don't, I mean, if you have a bylaw that says, yep, you can do that, and it gets to the fine line of what's a through road or what's a dirt trail, if there's a permit application to put something on the road allowance, and I think that would be minimal standards, then administration's aware of what's happening behind the scenes. Because I know there's areas that all of a sudden a gate shows up across the right of way, and whether it's a Texas gate or just a wire gate, it's still a blockage, and livestock could be at large if it's left open. So that, I think a crossing on the right of way needs a permit in that bylaw.
Councillor Keever?
I don't like the idea of an on-grade Texas gate, you know. I mean, anybody thinking of a Texas gate is thinking it's just going to be like a rumble strip, not a launching pad. And it's a dirt road. Why not just dig the hole and set the gate in there, you know? They're used all over the place, and that's what people, you know, I mean, expect of those things. So why not go and do it?
Mr. Reeve?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
I guess it is a dirt trail, and whether you dig it in or not, I recognize what Councillor Keever is saying, but I know there are plenty of places that I've traveled on dirt trails now that we have oil activity going on and those big water lines going through, where there is a culvert on the surface and there is a ramp up and a ramp down, and in some cases no signage. So we could put signage saying there's a bump. If we want to dig it into the dirt trail, I still think it needs to be temporary because we need to address the policy. So I'm going to move that council approve temporary Texas gates, and that we authorize administration to negotiate how those get placed for the 2021 grazing season, located at the two places that have been indicated in this policy, in this request for decision, and that we direct administration to review that policy and bring it back in the future.
That would work for you, Mr. Hogan?
Through you, Mr. Reeve, I think it would. I'd suggest that we break those into two motions. If that works, the first, I think, is Carolyn's written. Move that council approve temporary Texas gates. Yeah. And direct administration to work with the applicant.
For the 2021 takeout for a temporary, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And then stop at, yeah, take that second out.
And then yeah, what Carolyn has highlighted there would be a second.
That needs the approval of council. I think, I'm very uncomfortable trying to make a long-term policy change and establish a bylaw that could set precedent, something that we may not want. I'm just worried about this being long-term and that we might set a precedent here that we have unintended consequence. So my motion is that we approve them temporarily for this particular grazing period in recognition of the need, and then we address the more long-term issues going forward.
Okay, I'll wait for those motions to come up on screen. Well, I guess we can deal with the first motion that's already there. I'll read the motion out for Mr. Hugo. He can't see the screen here, I'm sure. So the motion reads that council approve a temporary Texas gate and direct administration to work with the applicant for the 2021 grazing period located at, and the range road and township roads are all as they are listed on the original RFP. So we'll just fine tune it. Okay, is that the way you would like? Okay. Is that the way you would like to see that motion read, Councillor King?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll read it one more time. Councillor King moved the council approve temporary Texas gates and direct administration to work with the applicant for the 2021 grazing period located at. Okay, is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
And I'll make that second motion as well.
Okay, and that is the way you'd like to see that motion read, Councillor King?
Yes, that's
Okay. I'll just wait for. Okay, so the motion reads, Councillor King moved the council direct administration to review the Texas gate policy and bring back to a future council meeting for consideration. Is there any discussion to that motion? Not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Oh, I think your screen is froze. Okay. Councillor Hugo, opposed or in favor?
Oh, in favor.
In favor, okay. Your screen had froze, so I didn't see any motion there, so that's why. Okay, so that motion is carried unanimously. Alrighty, so our next agenda item, council and committee reports, 10.1, Canadian Badlands. Deputy Reeve McGee.
Thank you. I attended through Zoom or one of those types of
Video conferencing?
videos, meetings that we had with Canadian Badlands Ltd. It was a special meeting regarding a vote as to whether to dissolve or not. It took us quite a while to wait, to phone and wait for people, so we had enough to make quorum, yes. So I thought that was interesting. Pretty well all the larger municipalities have withdrawn already. So a fair number of what is normally collected for requisition has not been. In addition, we were operating on a lot of different grants that have been used up, and time is not available for those types of things any longer. And because of that and some of the feedback from some of the municipalities, the board has analyzed various items and has quite an extensive report that they showed pieces of at the meeting on the screen, but did not get to our members. So there was quite a lot of discussion about being asked for this vote without bringing appropriate information to our councils first. So, but we had decided, because of the overwhelming reasoning, we did dissolve. The vote was voted to dissolve. So therefore, none of the money that we were paid in our requisition for this year has been utilized for any of the municipalities, so we will get 100% return on that money. They wanted it to be clear that when they first started the Canadian Badlands, the goal was to make it a recognizable, iconic destination. And according to the feedback they got through various consultants, Travel Alberta and some municipalities and travelers themselves, they feel we've accomplished that. And it was nearly 12 years, I think it was, that they ran. So, so they also feel that, you know, that's been accomplished, so what's our next purpose? And having said that, the Travel Alberta has said that they would keep the Canadian Badlands logo and call it and deal with it the same way as we have the Rocky Mountains of Canada. Rocky Mountains of Canada is not owned by anyone. It's just simply this term that's been used freely, and they are saying that they would include then the Canadian Badlands in that same kind of capacity in all of their promotions. They did mention that their promotions will be focused around the Drumheller area, so I think we might have to watch out for how we're being advocated for as Kneehill County. Having said that, though, I have to say that based on the information from the Kneehill Partnership Committee, we've had great feedback about our own tourism package that we're doing here in Kneehill. Extremely good feedback. So I think we are, I think we're in a position where probably Canadian Badlands would be redundant for our needs anyhow. So I find that to be a great coincidence. So I have requested all the information they had for us at the meeting to be given to me, and I will forward it to you in case you care to look into the details. But I just think based on proper process, you should have access to that information. So I will be on top of making sure it comes. I was not the only municipality that was bringing up that issue. Anyone have any questions about it?
Councillor Christie.
One of the topics that came up at Community Futures the other night, it appeared to me that like the County of Kneehill and County of Wheatland is covered by Community Futures Wild Rose. They felt that we were only about 20% of what the area that Canadian Badlands covered. And that meeting, it was like, what are we getting out of this? There was really nothing. So it surprised me that we were that small a percentage of Canadian Badlands, but at the same time, I was way out north of Camrose, and here's a Canadian Badlands sign. So that was why I asked the question there, is how big is this?
And that was the piece that the consultants really highlighted, is that when you go through the County of Wheatland as an example, they don't see what the average traveler thinks Badlands means. Badlands means the layered earth and the hoodoos and all those types, the valley and that type of thing to a traveler, and dinosaurs. And so having that label across even Mountain View doesn't make sense, right? Yeah.
Councillor Keever.
In most people's minds, when they hear Canadian Badlands, they associate that with Drumheller. And so all these jurisdictions were thinking, well, we're really just working for Drumheller. We're not working for the Canadian Badlands, you know what I mean? And there is lots of other Badlands other than Drumheller.
Yep. Yep. Well, personally, I'm just really pleased that we have a good tourism project on the go here within our area, and I think it will serve us way better than what Canadian Badlands ever has, in my opinion. That's the closing of my report.
All right. Any other questions for Deputy Reeve McGee? Oh, I don't see any. Well, we do have the number 9 highway. Now it's been changed to Badlands Trail, so. Well, yeah, it comes up on Google Maps. Yep. Well, starts at the number 1 highway and it works its way through Drumheller, and I don't know. Yep.
I do too.
So you can find it, as long as you travel enough of it. Okay, and 10.2, Three Hills Discovery Night. Councillor King.
I won't take long, but I did want to acknowledge the work of our staff at the Discovery Night. Our peace officers and were very visible there and circulated around and had lots of good conversation with mostly residents of the town of Three Hills, but it still was good. So I just want to pass a compliment along to them. There was a lot of people there when it finally got rolling. It was a little out of the usual time frame, but our staff did a good job, and Kneehill County was quite visible there. So just want to acknowledge that.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Councillor King? Someone care to make a motion to receive for information? Councillor Penner.
So moved.
Okay. So we have a motion to receive for information as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Next agenda item, council follow-up action list. Questions, concerns? What's the new protocols now for COVID? Does anyone know?
Well, I did just see that Dr. Hinshaw was apologizing to doctors for the strategy that's led to the 4th wave in the province. In terms of protocols themselves, unless they've changed in the last couple of days, it is still mandatory masks in indoor spaces. I don't believe that's being heavily observed out in the public, but it is a condition. Right now, isolation and quarantine protocols are still in place. And other than that, they are encouraging, or at least as it impacts us, they are encouraging, they're not mandating it, but they're encouraging work from home as well.
Okay, so we are still open to the public.
We are.
Okay. Councillor Penner.
Just a question on the Redland Buildings and that. Is there still anything there, or is it all sold off and?
Through the Reeve, I can give you a little update here. I did get an email yesterday. At the Redlands scale, 2 medium bins and 4 large bins are sold. The 4 large bins are still on site and probably won't move until after harvest. And there is still 1 small bin for sale. So yes, we're closing in on moving those off-site. We'll bring back in one of the council update reports just where we ended up with all of that resale of surplus equipment.
Thanks, Lori. Any other questions, concerns, council action items? Councillor Christie.
Gravel blitz, are we getting any uptake on gravel sales?
The last update I had was not a lot, and so we'll look at that. I believe some of it is actually being done out of the Redland site today, or at least this week. And so what we'll do at the end here is we'll go back and look at the uptake on that and maybe come up with a couple. There'll be a decision there if we just want to keep plugging away like this, or if there's a different approach that we want to take to some of that material.
Councillor Penner.
If nobody has anything else, I'd like to move that council receive for information the council follow-up action list as presented.
Okay, we have a motion before us to receive for information as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. That brings us to the end of our open session. We are now going to go into closed session under FOIP sections 1(7), personnel. Would someone like to put us in closed session? Councillor Christie.
I'll move us into closed session.
Okay, motion's been made, move into closed session. All those in favor? And yep, okay, we are in closed session.